the easiest thing to address first, and if there's additional cuts or whatever, it would be shown in this big piece of paper that describes each one of the departments and water and sewer in the operational budget we're proposing. Okay? So if you look at two big hitters in 2020, up in the left-hand corner of the FY 2020 budget is $60 million and $180,000 plus $4.7 million in non-departmental. Okay? Each one of the departments are broken down to the 5 categories from administration, executive and legislative, legal, community, parks and recreation, police department, fire department, public works, and engineering. And you can see the 2 columns, what we're working with now in 2019 versus what we're proposing in 2020 and the change. Now, a couple of things to note, we hit on in a couple of different ways, was the things that we doing this year that we haven't been doing in the prior years, or what has changed is primarily we had to address about $800,000 in personal services due to the Piers. Is that 3%, Joe? The Piers is costing 2 point. But bottom line is about $800,000. So that's buried, or that's covered in all the personnel part of this this budget as far as the departments. And again, that's the operations of the city. Let me say that the number of employees, both managers, actual, and vacant, that's actual what it is today, and there may be 1 or 2 pluses or minuses to personnel, but we've actually removed as many vacancies as possible to bring the projected, the proposed budgets in line and to reduce the amount of other financing sources to operate with. Okay, is there any questions on the departmental budget? And we kind of hit on the other day with non-departmental, the things that we've been providing support to the different organizations, the library, the museums, and other groups. And as you can see, last year, that non-departmental budget was $5.255 million, and we've been able to cut that down and do some things to reduce that to $4.787. Okay? Any questions on that, George?
Yeah, on the employees. Now, how many employees we have? What is the management thing on the outside?
That's just people who actually have people who work for them. This was one of my figures that Jody and Human Resources indicate, different levels of, in the trenches, supervisory, departmental, section manager, and so forth. So that's my internal kind of documentation of who's doing what, who reports to different people. So that's really, it looks, and you break each one of those departments down by each section, the 121, 122, 125, within the different departments. That's just internal to me. But Jody, how many in total folks have we added into the general fund or the department? Or how many have we subtracted?
Because I know when Sherry Bell said she had 50 employees, 50 plus 8. Well, you got down here 100.
Yeah, this is actually what we operate with right now.
Say again?
Seasonal employees is 100 or so. Anyway, this I should qualify that. That's actually what's in place right now within each of the departments, not what's proposed. How many more employees or less employees are we having this year than last year? What was the kick, one way or the other? It was about 4 or 5, wasn't it? So we're operating basically on the same deal, but we actually remove in the proposed budgets a lot of vacancies. Cut it down to the bone. Okay, I think, of course, police and fire, and some of the things we got to add with, and we've offset that too with SAFER grants. So that's not really apparent. It's not really showing you what the full picture is. But as long as those 2 SAFER grants that we have keep continuing, then it sort of overstates the amount we're paying, but because we need to offset that by the revenue we're receiving from the SAFER grants.
Yeah, because the SAFER
grants, is that fair?
They pay 75%.
Yeah,
for 3 years.
So, but that is all reflective in what we're trying to do. In the revenues offset in the actual payroll.
I just thought that one was out of line more than the rest of them because the police department, all they said they had 175, whatever they got these numbers.
Yeah.
But then Sherry said 50 and 8, and 100. So I was.
Well, that's seasonal.
Yeah, I'm just saying. So I was Because we were looking at full-time employees and people on the insurance, and we had roughly about 600 people on the insurance.
Right,
You know, so when we had the insurance meeting, we have to know that.
yeah.
So that's why I need to find those correct numbers of people employed in the city, full-time, that have insurance.
Right.
Yeah, you gave me that sheet, which
Yeah.
is right
And
around
that-
600,
and I should-
590 something, I mean.
Right, and that should have been reflected, but it's not. I just pulled that right off the computer from the personnel. So now, if you look at, to go from one sheet to the other until you get to the nuts and bolts of this thing, the 60,180 takes you to the second page on the proposed FY 2020 budget. And you can see that ties into the estimated the departmental expense. Better take these away, I'll read better. Okay, so everybody knows where we are, and we're going to go forward from there. So any questions? This is as refined as we can get with the departmental budget and operations budget. So I prepared what I think is the analysis of where we need to go and what we need to do for the estimating of what we're going to do in 2020.
I know some of the questions we had last time was like we have roughly 60 million, just round off in income revenue. And we had roughly at that time like 64 million in expenses.
When you
So our
include
expenses are-
when you include non-departmental budgets, that's right.
Right. So do we still have, I know
We do, and
Mike
that's where,
Lennon said he was going to look
Yeah.
at some of this stuff, so I didn't know if anything changed from the last meeting we had.
we skinned some things down.
The last time you saw this, there was an even 4 million ending cash balance, and now 4.3 million.
So
Yeah. Well, you had made the statement at the last meeting that you thought it'd be hard, but you could probably pull another million, so I was just asking if
We-
you looked at pulling anything from that. So it's still the same thing you had last time?
we actually,
64 million? That's what I was looking at.
that's right, but the ending cash was refined from the complicated combined balance sheet to 4.3 instead of 4.03, I think. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, I know he's looking at like the police department where you're buying, Chief Miller, 15 cars. Each car runs
Yeah.
about 45,000.
That's a
And
good
I
point.
was asking the mayor, do we have to buy 15? Could we buy 10? Or do you have to have 15?
Well,
You need to tell us how
let
bad.
me tell you, I think we're trying to work in about 20% per year. Is that not right? We're trying to replace it. So every 5 years, you've replaced your whole fleet. At least, you're hoping to get 5 years of service out of whatever we buy. And
Mileage on your oldest batch that were. That's what they get after 5 years.
well, you might want to go back to this departmental thing and put some summaries of capital items. Now, this is not all police cars, but it's body cams and not all for the police department. But, last year, in those kind of capital items, which, is derived from a set of things you're going to buy, we've actually, last year, we put 1.839 million of that kind of stuff. This year, we're 3.279 million. So that's about 1.439 million over, and that includes a fire truck, a few police cars, and what it takes to equip those police cars. 2 fire trucks, as well as the staffing of the fire department that will come in online.
Well,
Okay,
we
and
have-
that's noted. You can see in this column right there, the capital outlay column.
I know y'all have said, Ken has said you have to put the whole price in the first year,
Not the
So-
price, the actual value.
that value. And we paying for it like every, with a
Every-
15-year
yeah.
plan?
Well, some of them, the schedule is different, but we got to record that because that is actually an asset that we come on board and we treat that as a revenue for this year. We'll still be paying on it a number of years. It has a life cycle, so that's I would say capitalization of the deal.
But the cost is not that. The cost is.
Of course, it's only 1 year.
Whatever it is.
That's right. The cost is just 1 year of whatever. It may be 3 years on one thing and 5 years on another. Yeah. Yeah, okay. You're offset to the revenue. Yeah, right. All right, okay. So that's all doing the things we need to do for GASB 86.
Yeah, didn't you say the expense, it would cost us about 500, a little better than $500,000 to pay for the fire trucks and the police cars over the next 15 years, something like that? It was 150 something and 350.
Yeah,
And
Yeah, but the difference is like 300 and something thousand. And then for the fire trucks, the difference is 789 or something like that thousand.
So we expense it and offset it in the revenue that we count.
Well, no, it's more than that.
Okay. Well, anyway, that's the answer to your question with regard to the equipment that we're buying. And there is a plan, a fleet management kind of situation to do the things, we buy the things that you need to do with a life cycle in mind. Is that a fair statement, Chief? Yeah. Okay. All right, any questions? Okay, let me make a few notes and then I'll ask you for some
It's up to
questions.
them, Nick.
Huh?
Just, go ahead.
Anybody else have any questions on this?
Keep your shoes on.
Anyone else have any
I
questions?
don't want to throw me, I just want to tell you them all.
Being good.
All right, so at the top of the 2nd Street,
Wait a minute, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Stimming does have a
Ma'am.
question. Oh, never mind. Anyone else have any questions? Okay, go ahead, Mayor.
okay, on the top of the next page is what we're proposing and what has been proposed. So this is a summary of this detailed sheet that is really complicated, shows every little of the 39 funds that we do and nuts and bolts of everything. This is the one that has the most, I guess, discussion. In the past, you see a little bit of what we tried to project around this time each year, okay? And a big part of the measurement, I think, that we've been concentrating on is what we're going to end with the cash balance, okay? So the projected cash balances over the last years, you can see, for this year, for 2020, this is of September in 2020, we're projecting, $8 million to start with. And then last year, we projected $6 million to start with, and following that, we 4.8, and in 2007, it was 5.873. Okay, so each one of those years had an estimated amount of revenue and departmental and non-departmental and other expense, and as well as other sources. Those other sources have included capital, or actually land that we've sold and other things that we've done, proceeds from loans and that sort of thing. So that's that other financing sources proceeds. You're looking at that as like a revenue. And, we may have, we don't know at this point in time, I think we've estimated sale of property about 100,000 this year?
I think there's 50 in there.
50,000. So, but we could sell, if something pops up and we've got how many pieces of property and things to look at, about 50 lots that we have. Is that not right?
It is right. We've got lots to sell.
Mayor, can I, you're talking about the beginning and ending balances. Wouldn't the ending balance be the next year's beginning balance?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're projecting.
Okay.
Okay, so we're projecting at this point in 19, this is actually what happened in, excuse me, I did something wrong there. This is the budget we did to be projecting to end. We did this time last year to project what we're going to be ending with in 19.
That was a projected budget, but the actual beginning was the actual.
Yeah, and that's reflective down in the middle part of
I
this.
got you.
You see?
Okay.
So at this time last year, we said we're going to wind up starting with $6 million, and we're going to do the things that we're trying to estimate, and we'll wind up with 4.5 million. Okay, so we're estimating now that we'll start this instead of 6 million at the beginning. We start with 8 million of this year. Now, the budget, the 2020 budget, is a recap of what we're saying. But if you look back in estimated revenue lines, everybody on that? So we're, I think everybody was in agreement with about what we're going to estimate as far as gaming revenue, as ad valorem taxes, personal property, sales tax, and those kinds of things. So it'll make up 59.345 million. But you can see in the past what we started with. Again, this is the guess we started, and what we tried to anticipate is actual things that happen. But at this point in time, last year, we said about 58 million in revenue. Okay, and the year before that it was 57.203. Now, you look at when things came online as far as gaming, and we took a hit of about $1 million because of Scarlet Pearl, and that's reflective in what we guessed at that point in time. They came on board in December of 2016 and 17 is when the GGR was impacted for our 8 operations here. So we've overcome that guess. We've overcome that hit to the revenue. Again, the gross gaming revenue for our 8 casinos have invested and done the things that they needed to do, and as well as The sports betting part of the deal is, and again, I had a meeting with all the GMs, that's better than anticipated. So this is, I think, a reflective, and it may be conservative estimate of the revenues. Mike?
Conservative.
Conservative. So it may be more we would expect, hope more. But again, we've overcome a lot of things that hit that we've taken, and we did take, and actually it was more of $1 million than just 600,000 that we estimated. So, at one point in time, it went from 18.5 back to 17.5, then again to 18.5, and then where we're at right now. But again, the experience we had in September of last year was sports betting, and that kicked a number that was normally 1.5 to 1.9 million. So we hope we got one full year under the belt. The casinos have invested millions of dollars just in their sportsbook operation. So that'll be reflected not only in the GGR, but also in the taxes they pay, ad valorem taxes.
Mayor, if I could,
Yeah.
just one thing I want to add, and that is, I know the council is understandably a little nervous about adopting a budget where the expenses exceed the revenues. But you should know that 13 of the last 17 years, you and previous councils have adopted a budget where expenses exceeded revenues. It's something that we have consistently done, 13 of 17 years, and at least we're showing you on this sheet for the last 3 years anyway, that we've been able to outpace the revenue
Well-
and hold expenses down so that we actually grew the income. We
Well-
actually grew the cash.
Yeah, that's the next section I was going to get to, Mike, but as far as you have done this in the last 4 years, you looked at about what we needed to wind up with in cash for things to happen. 17, you projected up 17 to 4.063 million, in 18, 5.09. Last year, 4.5. Okay, so this year's not but a couple hundred thousand. So it's something that we've had to guess. We together had to guess and hope that we do. And we've done our part, and that is reflective in the middle section there, which is actual cash. Okay? Everybody with me? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to say, look at 16, what we actually ended cash with. This came from the audits, from each one of the audits. Okay, we actually ended cash in 2016 with 6.06, yet we actually estimated we were going to have 4.063 million. The next year, 17, we wound up with 6.593 million in cash. The next year, 8.78 million. And this year, we're playing with the numbers, and we feel good about winding up, starting the year with $8 million. Hope so. Well, it's all a hope, okay? All right, but if you look at the difference, and I call year-to-date gain and loss, what's the difference from each year? Last year, that number was 2.1 million. The following year, that was 5.29 million. That's 3 million, right? Almost 3.75 million in the last couple of years. We feel Mike has done, our departments have done what it needs to keep the expenses underneath the goal. And we beat that, we won that bet last 3 or 4 years. So if I were in your position, I wouldn't feel nervous about it because we've proven it. And that's just my opinion. And my shoes are still on, so.
That's your opinion. Right, there you go.
right.
We all listening right now.
Yeah, okay. Well, so, just look at the numbers. Now, what is in the audit is called cash and cash equivalents, and that's made up of a lot of things, and different accounts but all the things that you see in the general fund actuals is booked to that general fund. The rest of them, you can see is separate. We separated some funds, about 1.4 million in 2016. That was the Economic Development Security Fund that we established when we got that 4.1 million. We paid off some loans. The difference went in to fund number 13, and that's where that is reflected. So you can see where we are with that fund. That's really considered part of the general fund cash and cash equivalents, but it's there to use without restriction, except for we said that we should like to have a repayment of that to keep $4 million in fund balance, not cash, fund balance. So that 1.4 was the residual of actually paying about 4 high interest loans off, and as if we would have paid it off through debt service. That should have been replenishing. Okay, everybody understand? Everybody digs in?
As we have that service.
Okay, but that's still cash at your disposal. Another thing, that we should note in capital projects. We've been every other week we meet and try to stay 60 days ahead in cash. At one point in time, and right now, as a matter of fact, the city has given from the general fund to capital projects to pay things. So that due from is about 5.4 million. And we've got some cash, and we use some of that cash as we roll out in the tune of about $1.5 to $2 million a month. But we hope we keep that money in the queue from MEMA and FEMA to keep that, so cash flow won't be a problem when we get into the finishing up of the north contract as well as the south contract and, the west contract and some of the other things that may come up. But we put into that plan is the ability to, we borrowed, when I came on in 2015, we borrowed $11 million, a grant anticipated loan, a replenishment loan. We paid it down. Now it's 2.3 million, Mike?
2.1.
2.175?
2.751.
So everything cooks along. We're going to pay that off out of the due tos and due froms. Yeah.
This year.
That was the money that you're dealing with FEMA?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's 11 million. And you're down to what, 2 million?
To two.
2.751.
Okay.
So we're going to pay that off, but if something pops and we, something unforeseen, I'm not going to say, that's all I want to say, unforeseen. But, because I'm not going to say that word, okay? But, so there are some options we have. Again, the general fund is owed some money. Capital projects, will be healthy enough to do things as well as pay off the loan that we did in order to pay the vendors so we could get this project finished. Hopefully we'll be done with at least the north in November, and then the south will be rolling out in the first phase is underway. Right now we're booking at about 1.4 million a month, 1.3 million a month to Hemp Hill. Anyway, that's okay. All right.
2 million total.
I'm talking fast because this is on TV. Now I want to make sure I get a lot of stuff on it.
Well, some of us can't hear that fast. You got to slow down a little.
Well, let me slow down then. Okay.
The 688,000 at the police department from the Fofton, I don't think we're going to be able to get that kind of money again, but you listed it here, 688,000, the two from the state and the federal. How do we get the 688,000? It's got listed down here on the bottom. It's broke down to 430 and 257.
That's the cash account. That's what's in cash. That's in a different fund. That's what's there. We're not using it. That's what's there. That's all. Not all of it is booked to the 01 fund. Okay. The rest of it is payroll clearing and drug forfeiture and stadium and that sort of thing. That's just the rest. In the audit, it says cash and cash equivalents, and these numbers came right out of the 4 last books. So that's what it is. That's where additional money is, but we can't touch it.
My question was, do we have 680,000 to spend?
No.
That's my question.
Yeah. The
I know
forfeiture.
200,000 from the state.
No, we could spend it if it's spent for the right things, right?
But can you buy the cars from that too? You can't.
No,
There's
that's-
certain things you can't buy, but
The law says that has to be used to supplement and not be your budget. So, what we originally asked for was 26 cars, what we originally asked for, we cut down to 16. After those cars have been purchased and bought in the middle of the year, we could possibly come back and buy a few more out of that money. But we can't go before the budget.
you have to show them that you.
Anything else after that is just a supplement.
Well, it's there, and if it's by the rules, we can spend it. We'll spend it. But right now in this budget, we're not using that fund, those monies that you see in those two accounts right there, the third and the fourth to the end fund. Okay. Now, so the
On
question.
stadium, what'd you say about the stadium?
That's what's in there right now, and I'm not sure.
156,000. Now you got 198 plus.
Yeah, that's right, 198. That's what was there as of 9/30/2018. That's what it was then.
Well, we didn't clear that kind of money. I mean, that's just.
No, we actually put money into it, so that's the cash amount that was in that fund. Right?
Because I mean, I know we're not making money off the stadium.
No, well, but hopefully to put in the things that we need to address, like scoreboard maintenance and so forth, that would be the cash that we would use in order to do the things that need to be
Where'd the
done.
198 come from? Since we was in a hole there 2 years ago, with a negative 156.
Well, I think there's a rent of $150,000 a year, plus some other things that, the tourism rebate, that's about $50,000 to $60,000 a year that we anticipated. How much? Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, the rebate sale, but it's not a big figure. It's not in the hundreds of thousands, it's in the
There's
50s of
150
thousands.
is for the rent,
Yeah, that's right.
for the team.
That's
They rent
right. But we
150,000.
did we fixed the scoreboard at the beginning of the season. I think that
Yeah,
was issued out of it.
he picking up money here and there. I was
Yeah.
just-
But again, we're not proposing, that's its own fund, and that's, we'll have to address those needs as they come up,
Like I said, we're not
Right.
getting enough to pay our $1.6 million bond.
No, that's in debt service, no.
We're not even getting close to
No,
that.
no.
That doesn't even cover expenses, 200,000.
That's right.
I mean, with the lights, this
Well,
insurance.
and that's reflective too in what we're doing in the utilities. I mean, it's not its own operating fund. So we're eating at 160,000, what is it? 160,000 for the stadium we're estimating as far as the lights? Big figure.
It's running more than the rent.
Yeah.
We're
So,
not
but
done
that's
for the year,
buried,
but-
in the utilities within the budget.
Well, I know we talked about this last time when you had your operation, you left. On economic development, we had like 4.285 million.
I was in fund balance, that's right. And
Okay.
What we did with it, to get down to the cash that you see here, in that very bottom part, you see economic development.
Yeah, the 2.1.
Yeah, well, you can see what happened, again, right after we got it, into, the 4.1, we figured out what things we could pay off at the higher rates. We took that cash out of that, still it was 4.1, so it's a receivable to that fund, yet it used the cash to pay that off, and the debt service that was cranking out how much a year was supposed to be replenishing that money, and that's where we are with regard to that.
Yeah, okay, we had taken, I think, 2 million from the debt service fund.
That's it.
We got 4.98
That's right.
from the
That's right.
taxes.
That's right. We paid the thing off, we saved on the interest, we saved, and we actually allocated as if you were to pay that interest to repaying back the 13 fund, the economic development fund.
No, my suggestion was to put that 2 million back into the general fund. and
Well, you
make that-
can. I mean, that's.
Pretty much where it's
You
at.
could
Not-
do that.
Not be restricted, we put it in there.
It is really considered, as you can see, the arts is considered that as part of the general fund cash and cash equivalents. It could be done.
Yeah.
The accounting entry is not the 01 fund, it's the 13 fund. But, I mean, that's one of your options too, okay?
Yeah.
But, again, the options of, and we have, all of these budgets at the time it was done, uses, fund balance or gain or loss. And that's why I'm pointing this out. In the last few years, we put we made, revenues over expenses, 2.1 million one year, another $500,000. If you look at the actual year before that, maybe even more. So it's not unreasonable. In business, you would say, okay, I made some money, but this is what I'm going to do. But my revenues are not going to extend, over my expenses again. So we're going to use part of that. That year-to-date gain or loss is what we're reflective in this proposed budget.
Well, when you deal out on the streets and people don't know how you pass in a $4 million deficit, you can tell.
Well, it ain't a $4 million deficit. You're going to make me take my shoe off again. It ain't a $4 million deficit.
Just tell them that you got $11 million in the bank to take care of that, if you had that much money. I mean,
Well, that's what we're
that's
doing.
how you.
That's what we're
explain
doing,
to
actually
everybody.
taking the money.
They can't just look at it as a negative $1 million.
Well, it's
So half the
part-
people do is you have to explain that to them. No shoe, no throwing anything, just have to take your time,
wait, okay.
and explain that to them.
I am.
So I'm trying to explain to
We
you.
made $3 million over the last 2 years, and we're going to use some of it. Because it's some extraordinary, about $3 million of things we got to buy, and that's reflective in that budget, 3.2 million capital items, as well as $800,000 in the additional peers requirement for us to pay.
2%.
Yeah, so it's really something we got to do. We just happen to use it out of the cash or year-to-date fund balances that we've accrued. That's called fund balance. You're using that, but it's buried. That $3 million is buried in fund balances. Is that clear? Okay. Paul, you look like you got a question. Dr. T?
I do, but I'm waiting on the president
Oh,
to
I'm sorry.
recognize me. It's her meeting. Thank you. Thank you. All right, to be sure I understand this and that I followed it, because I can't always, as I said earlier, I can't always hear that fast. So we're looking at, I don't know what you call this sheet, but we're looking at this sheet, Mr. Mayor.
Gotcha.
Okay. So if you look at fiscal year 2017, the projected ending cash balance
Right,
was little over $4 million.
right.
All right. And the actual ending cash was almost 6.6 million.
Correct?
Now, so
16.
we projected in that budget, I think that was one of the years where we looked at our expenses exceeding revenue that year. But your point is, since we've done this 13 out of the last 17 years, that the administration more or less applies the brakes. There are some things in the budget we might do, and that totals whatever our projected expenditures are. But as the year goes on, you may not fill some positions, you may delay some projects, you might not buy some supplies or whatever, but you managed to save actually about $2.5 million more than you projected.
That's right.
But what it means
Actual,
is...
not projected. This is actual revenues over.
Right,
we've actually-
actual over projected.
And that, those monies are reflected in fund balance.
Right. So if we spent everything that we budget, if we spent what we actually budgeted, we'd go in the hole 13 of the last 17 years.
That's right.
Right?
That's
And-
right.
But even though we have budgets where expenditures exceed revenues, you've managed, through not spending some dollars here and there, to save $2.5 million in that particular year. We projected $4 million, we ended up with about $6.5 million, okay? That's all we're really talking about each year.
That's right.
Here's what we think we're going to spend, it's our plan. We're going to spend more than we take in that year's revenue, but you're still sitting on some cash to start
That
the
you're
year.
gonna use, that's
All
right.
That's our cushion, if
That's
you
right.
will,
That's it.
because I don't have the same kind of fiduciary experiences that you did growing up, point spreads and all that stuff. But
Yeah,
having
it's a
said
good bet.
that,
It's a good bet. That's right.
my point is, if our expenditures exceed our revenues in this year's budget that we approved, you still apply the brakes, as you have done in the past, to slow spending or not do some things that we thought we might do. That's how you manage to save some money
That's right.
at the end of each year. Am I
And we're
understanding
going to do that even,
correctly?
we will do that even if our expended revenues are going to, we're not going to spend the money if we don't need to spend it to provide
Right.
the services. So just because we'll be making money, we want to make more money.
Well, I'd like to add to Dr. Tisdale also, not only does the mayor or the administration applies the brakes, this council does the same
That's right.
thing when we're
Contract
looking
by
at capital
contract.
projects, and we
That's a-
can also apply the brakes.
That's a very good point. Remember, that if our revenues exceed our estimated revenues, we clap ourselves on the back and all go home happy.
That's it.
If our expenses have to exceed our budgeted expenses, we have to come back to you.
No, exactly. And we have budget amendments
To adjust.
in these circumstances. So, I mean, we're either approving those, as Mr. Glavin said, or not approving them, whatever. So either you get permission to spend a little more, or you don't get permission to spend a little
That's the
more.
process as we go through the fiscal year. So but right now, we're projecting, and you know, we've been successful, and we've been successful in trying to, you know, again, build that fund balance, make it the right sign, not the wrong sign. Some things happen that, you know, you got to bite the bullet, but we have the ability to address that, you know?
All right, now, this is a stray proton question, totally out of left field. So if we look at, say, you know, I'd really like to see DeBees resurfaced from Pass Road to Eula Switzer, at least the Biloxi side, because you know that's. We may have the money to do that, or we may not have the money. It depends on how the year unfolds. That would be a capital project, and it's not on the list now, but that's maybe a future item or something we could talk about. Having said that, I do have a question for, I guess, either you or Ken. At the top, under the general fund proposed budgets, that there's a line item, other financing sources, proceeds, loan paybacks, and transfers, and we're projecting 1.9 million for next year. This current year, we projected 2 million. In fiscal year 17, it was 366,000. What all comprises that funding source? And why has it risen significantly in the past 4 years?
Well, again, I'm going to take a shot, you follow up. Again, this year, it's some of the capitalization we did, but last year, we've sold some things, okay? And that is other financing sources, but a big part of that is about 300,000 is the administration fee from the water and sewer.
No, sir, that's up
Where
in
is
the,
that?
that's in the regular revenues and other revenue. What comprises the other financial sources is such things as transfer from the baseball stadium fund back to the general fund.
Proceeds and other.
Another thing is, on the expense side, is transferring the $25,000 to the baseball stadium maintenance fund. Okay? One that's in there is the proceeds from the lease purchase, 1.247250. That's the combined lease of the fire trucks and the police department body vest.
Ken, if we were to do a due-to from, we pay $1 million in the capital projects fund to pay back the due-to and due from, that would wind up in that area of revenue.
Yeah. But it's not this year.
Yeah, I got you.
Last year it was. It was in there last year. But actually, we couldn't afford it, so. But next year, in there right now is loan payback from the water and sewer. In other words, they owe the general fund $458,935 from a previous year.
Right, and will that be realized in this fiscal year?
Yes.
Okay, and also, for some reason, I, heard something about the Port Commission, when the city assumed the Port Commission, that we assumed some
There's a due-to.
debt there somewhere. I don't know what that amount was, but this may be news to you. But this is, am I correct?
Yeah.
And I don't know what the amount was, but at some
proceeds.
point, we might see reimbursement from
They should.
the port, okay.
The port and all water and
They did
sewer. So,
before. They was run by
we're moving up as far as
wasn't-
revenues, I think it's in water and sewer. And if, for some reason, we get some help, some additional grants in water and sewer that would actually free up more money there, we would actually try to reduce those down to, to zero if we could. And keep the deposits and keep the operational soundness there. But we haven't done a whole lot of that, but we have we could pull it together if we needed to. But that's where it would be reflected.
Okay, so I guess it would be fair to say the point you're trying to make is we do have new firefighters that we're hiring. We've got PERS contribution. We've got to capitalize some of these purchases that are spread out over multiple years. But pretty much this budget is not that much different from the previous several
Not at all.
years.
Not at all.
That'd be a fair characterization?
Fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
It would be to me, too. Somehow, this ability, you have to tie all three things together, not just the revenues and expenses. And the whole thing is actually, along with debt service, is part of the planned, reasonable budget. This is a reasonable budget, reasonable, and more than reasonable, and to address some of the things that we'll need to do to maintain operations and to provide the services that we have to do, and again, keep our quality of life.
My only concern is, since these are budget numbers, our best guess at this time, understanding that we may apply the brakes as we do as time progresses, is that there are some services that we anticipate providing. We'll still provide those. We may have some departments that are not fully staffed.
Right.
Okay,
We may have to
due to
supplant that
vacancies,
by
or we
overtime
may
or-
delay hiring,
Yeah.
or whatever, we may delay this or that or whatever. And there may be some things that don't get done, but that's the trade-off involved for saving the money, obviously. Thank you.
Bring something out about the port. Several years ago, the port was totally separate from the city. It was run by a board.
Right.
The city had nothing to do with it. When they got in a lot of trouble financially is when the city took it over.
Right.
So we did assume a debt with the port from the the other regime, which was their
From
own
services.
board.
Yeah.
Another thing, when 13 out of 17 years, I've been here for the whole 17 years y'all talking about, and if you go back and pay attention, Mike, we passed some of those things, and we voted against some of them because they had no general fund. They had no money, like 8 million. They didn't have any, they had 50,000, 60,000, so they didn't have the money to back it up. There wasn't no 6 million and 8 million general fund sitting there, or 10 million. When they passed half those budgets, they had no money behind it, hoping that they could break even. That's why we kept trying to balance everything back then.
We're
There
hoping
wasn't no
that-
$8 million sitting there.
Yeah, well,
It's
we're
on
not,
the fund.
this is not hope, this is not hope, you know, we've got what we need to do, and we've shown it the last 3 years. We're winding up with more cash than we started with.
And I'm just saying,
Now, whether you want to call it unbalanced or balanced, but it's a reasonable budget based on what we have to do in September to start business in October and go to the next year. And once you end business that next year, you got to gain a loss to do something with. That's what we're doing. We're doing that $2 million from last year, $5 million. That's all found in fund balance. It's where business operates, and that's the way. I mean, you got to buy. You got to, put money to make money, and that's what we're doing. See, my shoes are still on.
What I was telling you, but we had nothing to do with what you doing these 4 years. I'm saying for the last 13 years before that, there was no backup money.
Yeah.
That's why you wasn't paying attention. You were thinking slow, talking fast like I do.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
that's all I was saying. That's why a lot of years there was deficit. There was a deficit.
Well, it's not a deficit.
No,
Okay,
no,
let's say
no, I'm not talking about this.
I'll take
Yeah.
respectfully
I'm just
disagree.
saying,
A deficit.
try to
y-
clue
you-
everybody, figure it all out. Back then, they had no money.
A deficit.
They had no
is different.
4 million. They
This
had no
is not
8
a
million to
deficit.
start with.
This is not a deficit budget. Let me say that.
Well, I mean, you got 4 million more than you.
That don't mean it's not a
Yeah.
deficit.
But,
We're not planning on money we can't pay. We're not planning a budget we can't pay. We can pay everyone, even if this is.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. A lot of them
But you ain't
13,
had the cash
a lot of them 13 years, they didn't have no money
Yeah.
to pay nothing.
Well, yeah, but look.
That's what I was trying to explain to you. You missed that.
Well, look, you're missing a couple of things. That what we did, we were owed $17 million in 2015 when I came on board to the federal government. Okay, we borrowed $11 million so we could just go on. So, well, you got to put the whole thing in perspective. The deficit budgets are not what we're talking about here. One part of the operation is more than the other, but we got the cash to finish it. It's not a deficit budget.
You gonna take your shoe off?
No.
Now, one other thing I'd like to ask,
One
Ken,
more
one of y'all-
question.
Right. The $1.5 million that we got from the county, how do you account for that money?
This is the port
It goes into the port fund.
quarterly.
I understand that, but where's it listed at?
That's in the revenues of the port.
It's not in there right now, and the reason I took it out is because I was only recognizing the revenue, I wasn't recognizing the expenditure side. What we've done with the,
This isn't a 44 fund? Is that what you're talking about?
yes.
Okay.
What we've done with the revenues in the current year is as they came on and came due, we appropriated the expenditure along with the revenue. And I think that's the proper way to account for it, because it was
Cash in kind of.
it was inflating the port fund on the revenue side. It was inflating.
You actually are. I mean, they went through a lot of trouble to get the money, which is a great thing. You get the whole mill, it's $2 million. We was getting $500,000 basically to pay off the bond that we had. But now there's $1.5 million additional money.
Every year.
Can that go into the port where you could save money?
Here we go.
Like lower the port, it's not lowering it, you got $1.5 million to play with, but you use that money somewhere else in the city, out of the port, enterprise front. So I'm just trying to,
No, it's got to be used in the port.
so I mean, when you just gonna stack up the money in the port, what you gonna
Well,
do?
let me tell you, they
I mean,
will.
an extra $1.5 million a year is strong. That's a lot of money
Well, I
coming in.
understand.
We do charge the port fund an admin fee. And, as that fund gets healthier and healthier, maybe we can go up with the percentage that the port is paying.
Yeah, that's right. And then there are some things that could happen, we expect to happen with regard to grants and some of the other things that we would do in order to, rebuild a harbor or rebuild a boardwalk or those kinds of things. That's the intent. Anything that happened on the waterfront, that would be under that auspices of that fund. You're at a cash, and as you get the cash, you book the revenue. We can plan on $326,000 every quarter.
375.
See, I wanted to make sure they knew about that, and I know Peter, it won 2 or 3 different cases from Gulfport and added money. Where do you put that money in? How you list that money?
What money?
But I mean,
We
did you
can't
not
book any
win
against the
600,000 a year or something? I don't know, you was always pretty good what you
Yeah,
did.
no, it didn't make
So I just wondering where that money was gonna be listed at.
It would go as recoveries when we received it.
Say again?
It would go in the general fund as recoveries. So we have
That's
a
out in the
recoveries
HCUA
line
budget.
item that
We
monies would go
We
into.
did recover from the HCUA about $200,000 with regard to the Broadwater thing, although we spent 697,000, we did recover.
A couple of years ago.
200 something, no, but that was a couple of years ago.
Couple of years ago.
So I was just wondering, did we ever do anything with the state? Where you try to get the extra money that they pretty much owed, are we still in litigation with that? That's ongoing. I mean, that's a lot of money, when you start adding that money up, you know?
Mr. Tisdale, you have any other questions? Mr. Deming?
One thing I'd like, Madam President, we need a little help with the non-department budget. It's not big dollars, but in the last couple of workshops, we've talked around and around, but not made any decisions. So what I would say to you is you each have a copy at your place of the non-department budget as it stands today. If there's any interest there, with whether it be CTA, libraries, museums, whatever, is there anything on there that you don't accept as a group? What I would ask you to do is to motion it and vote so that we have clear answer on where you stand. Otherwise, that's the way, that's the ending balance, if you will. That's the result.
Is there, you're talking about 4.787?
So just, as I say, for example, there was a lot of debate about whether the CTA number was right or not right, and I gave you their answer.
Well, they're not answered. I'm looking for Coggins, and he's not here. So I'm not sure that what he sent out answers the question. I don't get why the operating cost or service per hour cost jumped 15% in 1 year. You said you got it figured out?
I think so, unless there's something. But in 2017, our operating budget, just base, was $280,700. And in 2018, that went to $282,800, which is $2,100 increase.
Less than 1% increase.
Yeah, and then we added a $34,480 onto that for that D'Iberville route. That D'Iberville route was 67. I went back through my notes. That total D'Iberville route originally was $67,500. That's from Pass Road all the way into D'Iberville. So we paid $34,800, and that got us to the D'Iberville line for however long. Come back the next year, and our base price, let me get to his deal.
Was 320.
Our base price in 2019, 2019 jumps to 320,000. So you take that 320 and you subtract that 317,680, which is a $2,320 increase, and you add the 23,650 and D'Iberville's 11,000, and that gets you to the 67,500. So really, if you take the D'Iberville route out of it, in 2018, we increased 2,100, and in 2019, we increased 2,300 and something dollars. So we've really only increased them, if you subtract that D'Iberville route out of there, about $4,500 in the last 2 years. They're subtracting the route and adding another $40,000 to us. So how does your expenses increase? 2,000 and then 2,000 and then 40,000.
The numbers I've got, Mayor, 282 went to the next year to 320, and went to this year at 333.
Yeah,
320 included $38,000 that was out there.
320 includes that 34 something. You subtract that out,
what-
that only gives you a
What would you
$20-something
propose if I
difference.
was to have to go to see my manager at D Chevrolet? What number do you want?
Let's add this, what we,
What,
so that
would tell me,
number.
300? Would you send him back 300? What?
Basically a $2,500 increase
I
per the
understand.
2
I-
years, so that would put us at like 200.
tell me what you want.
285.5 is what he's
we
trying
would
to
be.
tell you. If I
Well,
see
yeah,
a
what do you want to
circle
propose
up
back to
there.
me? Hey, this is what we're going to pay.
285.5 puts us.
What kind of survey, what is it,
the
what,
normal
It's
incremental increase
it's
that they
about
were getting.
0.75 of 1%. So 3/4 of 1% annually is what we.
It actually. gets
okay,
you
so,
to
but what is that,
285,
what is the arithmetic? What would we say, but hey, we're going to pay 300,000? we're gonna pay- 288 is what you want to pay?
320 would be the number that would be the.
All right, that's what the council feels, is 288, we go back to them? Tell me. I mean, you know,
I think that's-
or 300, or whatever, just give me a figure.
The number,
288.
the number was 280 and went to 282.
All right, so we,
If you need to pay
It-
5 or 6,000 more for the gas, then like you said, go to 285, 288.
Yeah, 288, that
288.
puts you at
That's all.
the
288 is
increase
what
that he
we're gonna
was
come
getting
back
every
with, right?
year before that D'Iberville
Wait, wait,
route
wait.
come on.
Somebody make a motion.
you make a
Bernie.
motion, 288, now, I'm going 288 once,
282.
280, wait a minute,
What'd you say?
288 is what he said,
All
not
right,
me.
well,
Number
I-
7 says
How about
288.
288? That way you got some increase.
It gives him the same incremental increase
Yeah,
that he was getting.
that's
every year.
justified.
Second that, 288.
Motion and a second.
George moved it,
Yep.
I second.
To do that. I mean, listen, we're expecting 288 for the
288.
same service, right? Okay, that's reasonable.
288.
That we're paying him 324 now.
No, it's
No,
not,
no.
34,480 of that is that D'Iberville service.
going
line.
away.
Yeah, 35,000.
So if we're getting rid of Cedar Lake to D'Iberville, we're also getting rid of from Password to Cedar Lake, correct? Because that's what that original jump was for. So if that's going away, then we lose that, right?
Not,
There's no way, there's no other way to
okay,
add that up.
288 is the figure.
Other than that.
Okay,
288.
all right. So we got to, okay, what we'll do, we'll propose, when we meet again.
The motion
Next
was
Tuesday.
to
Do we
amend the
need
budget
to?
and non-departmentals
No, about that.
for
No,
fiscal
whenever
year
we meet
to
again.
288,000.
Robert, when we meet again, we'll get this message to him. And, when's our next meeting? Next week, next Tuesday?
You got a
Hey,
public
this-
hearing coming up.
Public hearing on that, but I want to let him respond. We want to make sure we got the same service for that 288 we're paying. Right?
Correct.
Okay.
One,
Now, if we expand the service after that, then, as
we
we're talking
have
about
to look
Division
at it.
Street, we'll
look
address
at
that
it.
separately.
another one was, I know last year we went through a contract with Old Keefe and Micro that was $25,000 for the maintenance. And we wrote a contract to do that. So why is there not 25,000 here and you got 50,000? The contract states we put up 25,000, they put up 25,000.
It also, the management agreement also says we maintain the elevators. It also says we maintain the fire alarm system and the fire suppression system.
And that's 25,000?
Correct.
No, I don't think so.
With the with the growing price, with the increase in electricity, I see that the O'Keefe is down $18,000. Why did we take $18,000 out the 2020 budget?
I didn't hear you.
It's supposed to be 60,000 a year is all we're supposed to pay.
Okay, it was 70 last year, 78.
Right. It's supposed to be 5,000 a month. We agreed to pay on. That was another one.
That was years ago. That wasn't last year. That was like 3-4 years ago.
So is a question on the Or O'Keefe operation and maintenance, electricity. And
Electricity was
It
78.
was budgeted in fiscal year 19, this current year, 78,000, but we're looking at 60,000, a reduction of 18,000. Is there any?
Yes.
First, I guess the first
We
question.
pay 5,000 a month. 5,000 a month,
Right.
period.
Why did we pay 78 last year?
Well, that was before we got to the 5,000 a month. That was made last year, I guess y'all made that
We were doing
determination.
something half and half, and that's what it came out to
Yeah,
be.
yeah,
and-
we
and so
was paying a lot of it before.
Right.
And then y'all made the decision to go to, we'll pay $5,000, and that's our limit.
Yeah, but Ken, before it was 4,500. We was paying half of 9,000.
Yes,
That's where we got, it was 54,000 a year. And we moved it to 5,000,
yes.
at least half the bill, 5,000 or less. I'm like, Felix, I don't know why it was 18,000 more. We never, it was either 54,000 a year or 60,000 a year. When
Well, I
we
was
changed it,
wondering why we had a
changed it to
decrease.
5,000.
We did.
But it was always.
You're right. You're right.
4,500.
You're right.
Half of 9,000.
Okay,
right.
Mr. O'Brien, would you like to come up and give us the facts?
Yeah, tell us how we can get that 18,000 back.
Good afternoon. When we looked at this number at 78,000, we didn't know why that was in there. It was always 60. And I've got the other budget that was revised earlier. And this was the budget for 19, the budget. It was for $60,000. It wasn't $78,000. I don't understand it. And also at the very top of the building, it says the year 30,019 on the top of it. So I don't, yeah. But yeah, for the $60,000, we're fine with that.
Okay.
It's $5,000 a month. We're paying a lot more on the utility.
So we still got a 18,000 floating out there somewhere?
I don't-
Okay,
That's
so we
because
need to
last year-
revise this in on
So the
17.
18,000 had nothing to do with any of this?
We
Where
need
did
to
7,000, 8,000
revise
come?
19.
Say what?
That's
Well, how'd you
why we got the
apply to
78,000. 19, which is this year. Yes, according to this.
Yeah.
Let me read it.
No, no,
No?
it's electricity.
No, we were looking at this numbers today.
It's just the electricity bill. that we pay, and then we invoice them. And because of that, the fact that there's a delay there, during this fiscal year, we'll end up spending $78,000. Because that last month, we're gonna pay us the whole thing, and then we're gonna get the $5,000 back. It's just a
Yes.
timing thing.
It was the timing, we changed our fiscal year. Before, we used to be January through December. Last year and a half, we changed that to the same fiscal year that we're with the city.
With the city,
So
gotcha.
that's probably what the difference was.
Yeah, I remember because I think we had some issues with the report, that someone wanted to report, and they wanted it to reflect the same as the city. So I do remember that. I was just wondering about the 78 and the 60, and what happened to the 18.
45 to 50,000, the management agreement that we, revised management agreement that we did, says that we give them upfront, $25,000. We give them upfront $25,000 for them to do O&M on their buildings and equipment.
Okay.
But we retain the responsibility as the, owner of the building, if you will, to take care of the fire alarm, the fire suppression system, and the elevator, which costs us another 25 grand based on this year. So we give them 25, and then we pay for these other things. We spend about 25,000 doing these three other things. That's where the 50 comes from.
We don't own the building.
We lease the
They own
building. We lease the
Their
building.
board that owns the building. We don't own the
We
building.
lease the building. We won't own it for a few more
Why do we
years.
lease the building back from them?
I wasn't here when that happened, Councilman, but we leased the building. We leased the building probably, I'm only guessing, because when the big grants that came down from Jackson years ago to build the place, in order for them to be qualified for those grants, the city had to have an ownership interest. And I assume that's why we leased the building. It's a very convoluted arrangement that we talk about every year, and we always forget about it till it's the end of the next year. But we own the land, they own the building, we lease the building back from them, and as a result, we feel we have a responsibility to at least take care of the things like the elevator, the maintenance,
Yeah, well, we didn't get a,
fire alarm and the fire suppression system so a place doesn't burn down. And I've got those documents, as 3 inches thick documents that talk about this peculiar arrangement that we have. And it changes this.
They didn't have anything after Katrina for 10, 12 years. They didn't do anything. So I don't know how you had a contract that, when was this contract written? That we leased the building back.
What I'd suggest is that we have our city attorney read up on this and brief you on the exact ownership situation. But it's pretty clear in the documents that I have that we lease the building back, and they therefore responsible for some care of it. We lease the building back. Unlike the Seafood Museum, we don't own the building. I mean,
We own that building.
We own that building.
See,
We
right,
do
that-
not own the, we do
That
not
sits on
own,
city property, and we own the building.
we lease back the museum.
And we do the same thing with them. How come theirs is only 20,000? We don't do the elevators in there?
It's
How
a
can you have
much,
20 How can you have
we do
25,000?
elevators,
Okay,
but the elevator is half the size of the one at the Orr. The Orr Museum is the tallest elevator in the city of Biloxi.
it's on the 3 stories,
Four stops,
at 8,000 square feet.
as opposed to the Seafood Museum that's a one-stop elevator. So it's just a much more complicated machinery, so it's more expensive to maintain. Everything about that museum is more expensive. It's just the way it was built. It's a beautiful, artsy, real unusual place. But it is, from a maintenance standpoint, very difficult to sustain the care of it. And
Yeah,
and
that's what happened with,
both we and the museum are working very hard to try and keep it in
What happened with
shape.
the light bill, too. He can tell you that, the way it's built. It's just not energy
Yeah.
efficient. Well, that's the way it's built, though. I mean, you can't do it, you can't rebuild it now. It's a little late. We had the same problem we had the one across the street. It leaked, and the electricity was terrible. So, I mean, that's something that he's got to adjust somehow or another. But that was my thing, is you had a $25,000 contract, and you moved it to 50. So then you need to either re-get that contract written, if you got to cover all the rest of the stuff, and put that in there. Because it looked like the maintenance agreement was 25,000, now you say it's 50. So you need to write it, including all that, so we'll all know that.
There's not a number. The number 25 is in the management agreement. The management agreement also defines the parts of the building that we're responsible, the systems we're responsible for maintaining, but there's not a number, because it changes. One of the reasons why it's going from 20 to 25 this year is based on our historical spend this last year. Listen, here's the deal. If the council is uncomfortable with any of these numbers in here, make a motion and take a vote.
Well,
This is our proposal to you.
and this includes the management cost, and it's just a proposed cost of what it would be to maintain the elevators and the other things that we're required to
Right.
maintain, correct?
I would like to say the one thing that we're also doing too is that we're also now paying for a lot of the maintenance. Even since October, we're almost paying an additional $40,000. And I know this is why the city is very happy that been able to have a much better handle than we had in the past. And we're dealing with air conditioning systems that are like 12 years old, and they weren't properly go through maintenance. And so we are putting a lot more money beyond the $50,000 for just getting that place going. It is a lot of trouble as far as that old building. And so we're dealing with maritime, salt in the air and things like that. And it's been very, very difficult just with keeping the place going. And even today, we've got air conditioning that's out in 2 of our galleries, so we have to get those fixed today. So it's a constant thing that's happening to us. So we are putting a lot of our own money back into the maintenance and repair of the building.
You received a $5 million grant from BP. What can you do with that money?
Well, first off, it was only 4.8, and then
Oh, that's close enough.
and then the attorneys
So we just rounded it
and
up.
then the attorneys and the CPAs took their money, so that was 2.8 that we ended up with, and then we spent $872,000 to pay back to banks, which we had loans in the past. So it's not that much. It's not $5 million.
Oh, that's what you received, yeah, 4.8 million?
We did not receive we had 4.8, but then the attorneys got their money and the accountants got their money, which,
Yeah, how much money did Peter get?
how much did,
Just kidding. Just kidding.
I don't know, but I can tell you what the other attorneys got. But, no, so I think it's really important that we have the BP money there too, just to keep us going, because one of the things that the O'Keefe people are doing is they're paying for almost half of what we're paying for with our operations. And they have a corpus that they're working with us, and that money is going down. so that, in many years in the future, we're looking at a point where we won't have any money at all for this museum, and we got to keep it going. So the thing that happened when they were building the whole place in the first efforts, they didn't do an endowment with this whole thing. And like when you have a campaign, you should at least have 10% of any of your gifts going towards an endowment. So I don't know why they didn't do an endowment, but now we have something that we want to be able to sustain the building, the whole museum campus going, inevitably.
I have a question. How many employees do y'all have?
We have
Paid staff?
11 full-time and 5 part-time. We have 10 different buildings that we have to deal with.
And were we able to get a copy of that, that audit?
I have
You
it.
have that? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have both museum audits.
Okay. I'd like to get a copy of that
I'll
just
have
to
it for
look
you
over.
right after the meeting.
Okay.
Does anybody else have anything for Mr. O'Brien? I said, does anybody else have anything for Mr. O'Brien?
Not right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have some other questions about non-departmental.
Thank you for your support.
We'll move to the next non-departmental. Councilman Tisdale?
I was looking at, under non-departmentals, Gulf Regional Planning. They were funded in the past at 32.5, but we're looking at reducing that to 22.188.
That was the joint land use study that was done. Yeah, there was a joint land use study we were doing with,
Okay, so I guess we're done with that study, and that's what accounts for the reduction?
correct.
Okay.
One on the top, I want the 10,000 for the Martin Luther King. Talked to Felix, and Felix said everything's gonna be in Biloxi. Tell him about that, please. So we wouldn't give Gulfport $10,000.
No, not at all. If you
Okay.
go back to Gulfport, we don't give them zero. Right now, we've been working closely with the Salvation Army and trying to bring it right back where it originated in the neighborhood. So that's the whole goal, to kind of, especially with the streets reopening, we want to kind of bring that celebration back close to where it was once before. So, yeah, because Gulfport didn't really, when we brought it back to Biloxi last year, we didn't receive anything from them at all, no support, so.
I mean, I always say we support the 10,000 as long as it's in Biloxi. So we didn't know when you weren't here last week. We're gonna make sure
I was on
that you told everybody that.
I took a much needed vacation.
Well, that's all right. But now you got the straight story, it'd be in Biloxi, so that's,
Absolutely.
Any others?
The only other question I have is on the libraries. And I don't want this to be taken as Nathan's against the libraries, but I'm looking at the sheet that they gave us, and we've consistently given a larger amount than any other city on the coast. I understand we have 4 libraries, but our population doesn't even come close to Gulfport's. So we have 4 libraries servicing 45,000, but Gulfport has 2 that services however many thousand they have, which is significantly higher. They pay about, a little bit over half of what we pay. But if you look at this list, Harrison County has cut them 34,000 this year. Harrison County gives them almost $1 million. Last year we went from, I think, 695 to 707. So last year we already gave them a $12,000 increase.
I was pretty confused.
City of DeIberville, same thing, around 100 and something thousand. Gulfport, 418. Pass Christiana, 116. You can add all these cities together, and Biloxi's given more to the library system than all these other cities combined. So you can take the 4 library thing, and you can add up 4 libraries in all these other cities, and what we're giving is more. And so just me, I propose we give them what we gave them last year, which is the 707. That still gives them 12,000 above their base budget that we gave them before to buy some computers. I'll make a motion. I don't know if anybody they requested 722,254. Last year we agreed to give them a $12,000 increase already. So 707 is what I'll make a motion. I don't know if there'll be a second, but I'll make a motion for 707.
707 and 288 is what we're gonna come back with.
I'll second that motion.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. This isn't any official business. We're not, you're just,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone else wants to do that. I mean, that's just something that,
Made motions earlier about pay raises, so,
Well, no,
right?
I don't know, I'm just asking, I don't know if it's official.
well, the two items that are, will impact that non-departmental figure, which is 4.78. We're trying to ask for a reduction in CTA.
to 288,
And you're suggesting 707 for CTA. I mean, for the
no, for the
library.
libraries versus, and that include, I mean, that's still 12,000 above what we gave them the year before.
That's fine. Is everybody else cool with that number?
I'm not cool with that
That's,
number.
that's what, 15?
No, on the libraries.
Library, right. It was 707, right?
They,
Well,
they,
the year before, we gave them
I
695.
understand what we gave. You have a new library opening where you are. They're gonna have.
Yeah, and
new-
we paid for the library and built, I mean, we
You-
gave, we paid $250,000 for a new building so they didn't have to be in a
I
trailer
understand.
anymore.
But it
I
gotta be
understand.
staff, right?
I'm
Don't
just-
Yeah,
have
they
to
had
be
the
staff.
same
Just
staff that
making-
they had before.
I'm just making an observation. I don't want the mayor to take his shoe off. I'm
I need
just,
to go back to the manager with, is what I'm asking for, as far as buying a car.
I'm just making an observation. We just opened a new library. My question is, there's nobody here from the library. I'm wondering if they're gonna have new technology out there, or will it be older technology?
The county has put over, not counting the improvements to the building, they've put about $100,000 into that library.
It's okay,
county
so they'll have, I would assume, new technology. My point is, you've got to replace your technology in a timely manner. And what you heard from the library the last time we met to talk about the library was they're dealing with computers that are 9, 10, 11 years old. If you had a computer like that at your house, you'd use it for a doorstop or an anchor for your bass boat. That's all, that's my only observation. I think we ought to fund them at where we are funding them currently.
We increased it last year, 12,000 for her to do the computers. That's what she asked for,
Felix, you have
$12,000 to do the computers. Nathan said give her another 12,000 this year, do some more computers. Like that, they're like anybody else, they need to tighten up when they have, just like the rest of us.
Felix, you want to speak?
Well, you're looking for a consensus here, so I think you probably want to count noses, and I'm a no-nose to reduce where we are currently, the figure we're currently using.
It's what's in the budget now.
707,000 is a lot of money.
What's the pleasure? of
Tisdale
the-
is saying no to cutting the budget. Nathan is wanting to cut the budget.
I'm not wanting to cut it, I'm wanting to leave it at where it's at.
Clarify
Se-
it when you say where it's at.
Right now, we're
707.
giving them 707. They're asking for an increase of 15,000.
I'm saying cut what you have
So
for
no,
this.
Yeah, I'm saying no to the increase. I'm saying leave it where it's at right now at 707.
And I second that.
Did y'all want to vote on this? First of all, Mr. Guines had something to say.
I was just gonna wait till they get through.
That won't be anytime soon.
I know, it doesn't appear that way. They keep cutting me off. We added another library, right? We added another one, and I'm like Dr. Tisdale. You have to add staffing. Computers are ever changing. We have to continue to stay updated. And if I'm not mistaken, that library went where?
Wool Market.
Wool Market, okay, so it went in Wool Market, and it's gonna benefit that community. So for another extra $15,000, we can't support that library. I'm like Dr. Tisdale, we need to continue to leave it right where it's at.
Mr. Dimming?
Can I add something? We did not,
Hold on.
we already had a library. The staff that was already there was getting paid, and their pay is no different than what it was. We just took them out of a dilapidated trailer and moved them into a library. So we didn't add staffing. The staffing is still the same. We had 4 libraries before. We still have 4 libraries. We just moved from one location to a better location that the city bought for $250,000 and then paid for improvements.
Mr. Dimming?
That's what I was gonna say.
So, and I'll follow that with, the city could have just as easily not built the library and spent $250,000 at $25,000 a year for the next 10 years, which Ken would have had to account for properly, and bought new computers. So there's, and that's the point I'm trying to make.
Can we give them the building back?
I thought we had an agreement
No,
with
I
the
don't,
library that we would give them however much to buy computers every year,
Wanna
correct?
talk crazy like
And
that.
that's what we've done.
No, they come,
They come and
they
ask.
come to you with a request every year. They ask for some money, whatever it was, for computers. We didn't give them what they asked for. We gave
I
them a
know.
portion of that. They still have to rotate their stock, so to speak, those computers. That's all.
Right, that's the discussion we had back when, right? We couldn't afford to give them the money they were asking for all these computers, but we did say we would give you a little bit extra every year to
Yeah.
buy those computers, and that's
That's what we
exactly
doing.
what they're doing.
Doing.
So that little extra every year, for this year, 722 is what's in the 4.79, 4 point, what is it, 3 point? So 722's in there. Nathan has asked to leave it at 707, so.
I've got one question. Nathan, it sounded like you have some insight as to what the other jurisdictions or municipalities are doing with their budgets. Can you,
Well, it's right here. They gave it to us when she came to us, telling us what her income sources were.
okay,
How much?
what is the transition from 19 to 20 for the county?
Her total income, like you're talking total income,
What's their contribution from the county? What does the county get there?
originally was in 923,750. They cut them to 929,673.
So they cut them. What about D'Iberville?
The Iberville gave them a $3,500 increase.
What about Gulfport?
Gulfport stayed
You
the
said an
same.
increase? Repeat that again.
The Iberville gave them an increase
Okay.
of $3,500.
In Gulfport, no change.
No change.
In Pass Christian,
3,000 increase. And that's the only library systems that contribute, the only cities that contribute to the library system.
how much did the county reduce it by again?
34,000.
34,000?
That's the only cities that contribute.
Long Beach, nothing?
into the-
What did they do last year? Do you know?
didn't
How much
read a-
did they increase
They didn't read a
last
lot.
Wow. Well, my point is, my point is, the largest contributors are either staying flat or decreasing their contributions. Yet they come to Biloxi, who pays near 3/4 of the entire cost, and ask us to increase to make up for the difference of all the other people's reductions. I think that that's equitably unfair. I think that we need to maintain what we give them, or even reduce it and make the other jurisdictions that participate in the Harrison County Library system step their game up. It's not fair that they get to pull back on it and we got to move forward. We got to put the throttle down. That's just not correct.
So can I call for the question? I think everybody's chimed in. Call
Well,
for the question.
I
There's a
mean-
motion and a second to reduce it to, or to keep it at 7:00.
Well,
To
I
not
mean,
change
we're still in the commenting period, if I'm not mistaken, Madam President. Yeah, it's about services, and like you said, if they have two, they're paying for two. We just so happen to have how many, 4? So it's about services to the citizens, and that's what it all boiled down to. Now, if we're gonna reduce the services, we need to go ahead and cut a library. That's my opinion. If you want to cut the money, cut the libraries.
But I wasn't gonna say anything else, but we're not cutting services. You give them $707,000. Nobody we give $707,000 to. Nobody. So we're not cutting anything. You're actually adding 12,000 from the year before, and we give them 12,000 again this year to buy more computers. That's all they wanted us to do. That's what we're doing. You're not cutting anything.
Okay, all in favor of Nathan's amendment to stay as is? All in favor? Looks like 4. All against? 3. Felix, me, and Tisdale.
Madam President, so that is 707 is
707.
And again, that's not cutting, that's just not,
staying, that's right,
that's
not
just
increasing.
staying where we're at, not increasing their budget.
Okay.
Moving on.
The next one I'd like to bring.
Wait.
288,
288.
You're talking about CTA?
CTA at 2.
CTA.
There's
No real
really
vote.
nothing put before us, so we're not taking official action. This is,
No,
like
we're
you
gonna-
said, this
we're
is
gonna
just to
tell them
get
this is what we're
an
gonna budget.
understanding a consensus. There's no official action. Right.
I think everyone was in agreement
I
on
think
that one.
everybody agreed on CTA.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I want to bring up one other thing. In the community, from a recreational standpoint, I know on the west side of Biloxi, we have the Donald Snyder Center. The Salvation Army is starting to be a little more kinder to us and wants to open the doors up for all the citizens. We know the Salvation Army charges to get in. But what they wanted to do is kind of open the door for all the kids in the community to come in and have access and play. They've humbly asked for a possible donation to do that, and if the city would consider somewhere around $20,000 to open up their doors to the whole community. They haven't been doing it in the past, and I just wanted us to kind of beat it around the bush and think about that request.
Has anybody met with y'all?
If, Councilman, if we were to do that, if we were to supplement the Salvation Army so that they open their doors to kids that maybe couldn't afford to go, would that mean we could close the Mercer Cross gym?
That's what we probably need to possibly look at, because of course in the future we're looking at something else over next door that will help a lot. So that could possibly, I would like to consider that, because that will help us budget wise also.
Well, what we need Salvation Army to do for us then is to put that on a piece of paper.
Okay,
I think we can probably push it.
okay, sound good, sound
Add
good.
that back to non-departmental.
Still time in this budget year.
Okay, I'll work that out with them, and I think Vincent's on the board, and we'll bring back a proposal
Yeah.
to kind of see, because that could also
Yeah.
help us from a budgetary standpoint.
Mercer Cross gym, even though we're not paying the lease, it is costing us in terms of staffing and, personnel and some maintenance costs. So, we would be avoiding some costs if we
Yeah.
could close that facility.
But there may be some other opportunities for some other things that we'll bring to you
Absolutely.
with that. But, in the 5-year plan, we talked about another, gymnasium, playgrounds. After Oscar Winter clears some property down there, that would be, so that'll help us immediately in providing some of those services to East Biloxi that are not there right now, right?
Right. It
With the
would definitely-
20,000 to Salvation, if they do what we're asking them to do.
Yeah, and I think it will help from a budgetary standpoint, and then help us in the future as far as where we're looking to go.
Let me ask you a question. Can you use some of that CDBG money through that program? I mean, it's in that area. I mean, can we set aside 25, 30,000 CDBG money?
Well, that
Something
may-
like that, 'cause that's
okay, in the 5-year,
what the money's supposed to go to.
plan, we may incorporate that in the next cycle 5-year plan.
Yeah, we have to definitely put it in that 5-year. We're at the point now where we're gonna it's revision
This is it.
time.
Yeah.
And we can kind of
Yep.
incorporate some of those things that
Yeah.
we talked about, moving toward. Things that we couldn't do in the past.
Yeah, I mean, if you set it up like next year with them, then they'll see that money would be sitting there, whatever the number is, for so many years. That'd be good for them to see that.
Mr.
So that
Tisdale?
you vote on it every year.
Mr.
And the
Tisdale?
CDGB money's good for that. That's what it's for.
Yeah, just real quick, and I have in my notes the Gulf Coast Center for Nonviolence, but that's being handled through CDBG currently, as I recall. It's not listed here on the non-departmentals. Is that accurate?
The Gulf Coast Center for Nonviolence asked us in writing for $25,000. It was in the packet the last time we met.
Right.
The subject came up, were we not giving them money out of Community Development Block Grant? The answer is yes. They
Yes,
get
we are.
$10,000 in our action plan. So there's a gap there between the $10,000 that we know we're giving them and the $25,000 they asked for. So I would say to you, Councilman, perhaps we stay at 10, or perhaps we add 15 to that out of the non-CBDG money.
So the non-CBG money, you're talking about in the non-departmental now.
Adding that.
This is getting way
non-departmental.
way too complex. My only question was, because I recall in CDBG, we are making some
10,000.
funds available to them. That was for 10,000.
10,000.
and they requested 25,000, and as I recall, I don't think there was a whole lot of discussion about that. I think what they're getting through CDBG is fine, and I just let that dog lie.
Yeah, I know historically.
Definitely.
Councilman Lawrence has the history on the council here. Historically, I think we gave the Center for Nonviolence a great deal more than that way back in the past.
Speak up, I didn't hear you heard my name.
Yeah.
Talk to me.
What do you remember about the Center for Nonviolence? Did we not give them a great deal more money in the
They
past
would,
than we're doing today?
They were like all the other groups, and that's how they wound up in people, we wanted to fund them, so they wound up in the CDBG for the $10,000. Instead of, when we eliminated all the rest of them, we kept them, I think with the more, a couple we kept, and we put them inside the CDBG, because if you don't, they'll all be lined up in there again. You'll be
Look,
coming,
I think Dr. Tisdale hit on something, though. That is a good bang for the buck. I mean, that's something that's needed, and those kinds of services. I mean, me personally, I think they have room for like 40 folks, 40, and it's well done, well wrapped. Nobody knows anything about it. They protect everybody. Chief Miller was there to protect
Chief
everybody
just
that gets there, and probably the need for those kind of services, with the homeless and the homeless families and homeless everything, and again, domestic situations that we run across. I would, if we're only in there through CDBG, that additional 25,000, is that what they are?
They asked for
15
they asked for 25, so I mean we could.
we'd give
Is that in
them.
the 4.7 or not?
Yeah.
It's not.
No, well, that would be well. I think that was well
If
worth
you
it.
if you can recall, the chief, when we did talk about it last week or week before last, this is a service, like you said, the bang for the buck, because that will tax our police department more than basically what we're given.
Yep.
They provide a service that we really can't match at all.
Right.
And so this is one of them that,
Right.
out of the many, that we held on to it because it was a need there.
Yeah. Well,
And so-
what we've asked to reduce that 4.7 million by the 25, and then another one by 288. I think that can be well used. That additional 15,000 in that 4.7. I mean, I'm not trying to talk you
I know.
anything, but this if you haven't seen this operation, and it takes some hoops to get into it because you're not supposed to be visible. It's something all you got to do is visit it one time, and you'll see.
Look, But I never said anything. They
No,
do a great
I-
job.
I-
Just
I-
pay
I'm just-
attention. The
I'm-
reason we set those things inside this CDBG is to get rid of that $1 million we was giving away.
Yeah, I
Okay,
I
so you
understand.
can't, now all of a sudden, you know why they came back? Because of CASA.
Wait,
We have
no,
never had any-
it had nothing to do-
They
nothing
asked
to
for
do with CASA.
5,000. They
You better
saw
take my
that,
shoe off
so they
again.
come back with 25. I'm just telling you.
All right.
That's how this thing
All right,
works.
let me bounce this
Just
back.
leave
at
it
you.
alone. We'll fund it
Let me
next
bounce
year.
this back at you, okay? We're developing a 5-year plan, right, for CDBG, okay? If it's a one-time $15,000 hit out of non-department, and then the next cycle, 5 years, I would be an advocate of funding that more than 10,000. So, I mean, again, we'll do our deal. I mean, it's something that is very important, and you just visit it one time, and you'll see.
Well, that's why these CDBG public hearings are important, to go and talk about these projects and get input from citizens. So,
Yeah.
anyway, that's why they have these meetings. Thank you.
So that was my suggestion. You just leave it alone, do what you gotta do next year. I mean, give them the 10, we give them 10 already. Ain't no problem with that.
Okay.
The great program, ain't no problem with that. I'm just, the steps and the dominoes will fall.
I got
I'm
it,
telling
I got
you.
it,
There's a
got it.
reason that we did what we did.
Any other discussion?
I have one more thing, if we hadn't finished with
Go
that.
over his number.
What?
No, I was gonna,
Wes, you go over your number today.
I talked to Mike about dropping that 2.9 to 2.7, because that's about what we actually pay,
What?
right here on the premiums. And I just told him I'd bring that up, because we actually pay about 2.7.
Of course,
We always run 2.9.
As you know,
Insurance, you're talking about
it's
insurance.
insurance. So
Okay.
Yeah.
That's for claims and also for cost of insurance. And if we don't spend it, it just doesn't get spent. So, I mean, we're not gonna spend 2.9 unless there are 2.9 worth of
Yeah,
claims and
it's a
expenses.
budgetary figure. We don't spend, we don't have no control over it. We have in the past spent well over that, 3.2, 3.3, I showed you the
All right.
other day. It just depends on what happens during the course of that year. If you have some liability suits that
Some years we've
mount
gone
up.
over that.
This is property insurance we're talking about.
No, it's more
Property
than that.
liability,
It's property, liability,
Flood.
workers' comp.
Okay.
It's all of that. And so if you have a bad year of experience, well, then you might incur that 2.9. We have in the past. We've been 3.2, 3.3, 3.5.
All right, so Ken, let me say this, and George too, that, okay, if we budget 2.9,
Yeah.
and we don't spend it,
We
okay?
save it.
And if we, whatever, that was reflective in the cash in the fund balance, if we don't spend it.
That's right.
All
So I
I
mean,
would
we,
do-
let me, if this is within the realm, if we drop it to 2.7, and it becomes over that, we're gonna come back and get a budget amendment.
Right. All I was trying to
So
do,
all that's gonna do is.
Mike called, said to try to save some money, so that's what I did.
Well, you're not saving money,
So
you're
I'm
not saving
talk-
money, you're
I'm
just
not
reducing it.
$13,000.
You reducing this
So I did
mystical
that.
figure called a budget, that's all.
It's just a
I mean,
budget.
that's all it was, it's just a number. And honestly, I think on the thing with the Old Keep, I think Mike's right. People need to look at that contract. I mean, already got a $25,000 contract. You need to find out if we have to and how much that's gonna cost us. It's the same thing, you come back and do it. But we already did one contract to take care of that, and we didn't do that evidently. So somebody needs to explain to all of us, either we own the building, we don't own the building, we gotta maintain it, maybe you gotta shut down one of them buildings. I don't know. We can't you ain't got no money, just keep throwing it in the hole.
give a little tutorial on the ownership interest.
So that was the thing about that. But I suggested the 200,000, because it's roughly about what we paid last year, 2.7 something. That's the reason. I was just trying to save money.
Right.
So,
That's all. No.
well, you're cutting down the deficit, or you want to call it. Oh, yeah, you take it 300,000, yeah, you are. Yeah, that will cut lower everything in there. You still you can call it what you want. You get $50 million in the bank, but you get,
I'm gonna say if we cut it and then we have to go over it.
Yeah, then we got to come back to you
that's all.
and
You
ask
can vote
for
on that too.
a budget amendment.
Anything else on the non-departmental?
I'll make a
Anyone?
motion that we cut it to 2.7. Nobody wants a second, that's fine. I'm just
Anyone
trying to
like,
adjust the budget is all I was doing.
would anyone like to second George's motion? He wants to cut the insurance to 2.7 instead of 2.9.
Well, it's almost 6 of one and half a dozen the other. If you go over, you pull the money. If you leave it where it is and you don't spend it.
It just
it's
looks
there.
better on paper's bottom line, right?
Risk.
Right. That's 6 of one and half a dozen another. George, would it make you feel good today to get a second on this?
No, because then you're going to vote against it. That makes it worse.
If you want a second, I'll give you a second. I'd like to see you
Don't give me
leave
the
happy.
second.
If we did it and we had to go
you
over,
don't
we
like
would just
the
have to
idea,
amend
don't
the
do it,
budget,
that's all.
right?
Yeah, we have to
All I
do a
do is
budget
suggest
amendment.
them, you know?
That's what would be, I was about to say, is that if you're gonna drop to 2.7, that is historically what we've been spending recently, even though it was higher than that in other years. But you gonna promise me a 7-7 vote to give us some more money if we go over it?
Yeah, I mean, if, we wouldn't have an option if we.
Now, it's like arguing with your wife. All you want to know, Mr. Husband, is just tell me what you want me to do.
I spoke to Frank Bordeaux.
Why didn't you just say that?
I spoke to Frank Bordeaux personally and asked him about, could we go down to 2.7? He said, that is what you have been spending the last couple of years. It's worth the risk, but I can't promise you're not going to go more than that. Depends on what
You
happens
can't
in the
promise
world.
anything.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we got a motion and a second to reduce the insurance to 2.7. All in favor? Unanimous vote. Anything else you would like to discuss in the non-departmental?
Back to the top, can y'all find out about the thing, how we wound up owning the building, if we leased it back? Because I never knew that we ever leased that building back. I don't know if Peter's got to read something. I'd like to just have the information, if nothing else.
We'll ask to do a little tutorial at the next meeting.
Say again?
I'll ask our city attorney to give you a little tutorial at our next meeting
What's that?
on the ownership interest we have in the museums.
Just like to
We
know.
went through this a couple of years ago, so.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Guine, second by Mr. Lawrence, all in favor? Unanimous votes. All right, are we setting up
Thank y'all
another
for
special
coming.
meeting?
Thank you, Fofo, for coming today.